Good evening, dear judges, ladies and gentlemen. Here is my presentation for my teaching plan of the passage. Okay, first, here is the content of what I'm going to talk about in the coming 9 minutes. And I will be talking about, first of all, I will be talking about the main idea, the structure of the text that I have got so far. And then I will talk about the target student, objectives, key and difficult points, and then the duration or arrangement of my time, and then the procedures of how I'm going to teach this text in my class. Okay? First, I will start with the overview of the text of this Chinese text. As we can see, this is a little bit between ancient and modern Chinese. It is written by Zhu Shenghao, a famous translator, about his way of translating. Actually, he mainly talks about 3 layers of messages. The first layer is about how he is translating or what kind of rules he is following, whether he will first give priority to the style or to the language, to the fidelity or faithfulness of the source text or not. And in the second layer of message, he mainly mentioned that he will not follow the word-for-word translation. He will not agree with that. And then also he mentioned that if there is any thing that is not consistent with the Chinese grammar or the Chinese culture, the norms of how we use or of how we speak Chinese, then he will try to follow the original structure of this ST. So he will try to change completely the structure of the ST. So he puts target text, I believe, a little bit ahead of the source text, okay? And lastly, in the last part, he mentioned about, from the perspective of a reader, he always keeps the reader in his mind that he will think of himself either as a reader or as an actor on the stage to talk about the other things besides the information, clearness, ambiguity, or the intonation and the rhythm of this translated version of the ST. So actually, this is what he tries to say, how he translates a passage from the source language into the target language. 3 layers of message. This is the overview of this text. And then in terms of the target students that I am having, these students are BTI majors in the 2nd year, and this course will be about their translation basics, the very basics of translation. And in terms of the objectives of teaching, in particular of this Chinese text, here are mainly 2 objectives. The first one is to allow students to have a good understanding of the Peter Newmark. I'm going to talk about Peter Newmark's translation methods, apply that to the translation of this Chinese text. So the students, first of all, will have a good idea of the semantic translation and communicative translation. What does they mean, respectively? And also, students will be able to practice following these 2 kind of methods in class and outside class. So this is my objective of using this Chinese text, mainly to let them understand and practice the 2 kinds of translation methods by Peter Newmark. And then in terms of the key points and difficult points, I think the key point is to understand, and the difficult point is to tell the difference of semantic translation and communicative translation. It is quite difficult for a lot of scholars even to really distinguish clearly. So this is the key points and difficult points of this text. In terms of the duration, I'm going to teach the translation of this text in 90 minutes, that is 2 periods or 2 sessions. Coming to the procedures of my real teaching, there are actually about 6 steps. The first step, I will review what I've talked to them in the previous lesson. And the second step will be a lead-in part. Review and lead-in part will totally take up 10 minutes in the 90 minutes time slot. Okay? In the lead-in part, I will mainly give students 3 sentences. One is like from an expressive text, another is like a vocative text, and the third one will be informative text. And I will offer them each of these text sentences, each of the 3 sentences, 2 versions at least of translation. One is a little bit like semantic, the other one is like communicative. So this is a lead-in, and I would like them to have a discussion, very quick discussion of which one they think is better for the 3 sentences, expressive, vocative, informative ones. Okay, this is the lead-in part. And then in the teaching part, this Chinese text will be distributed previously or beforehand to the students, and the students will be already divided into 6 groups. And for every 2 groups, they will be translating. For example, the first 2 groups will be translating from 语义此类书 to 则谓感赞同, and another 2 groups will be translating 反喻原文中 to 所掩蔽. And the last 2 groups will be translating 每一一段进 to the end of the speech. That was already done before class, before they come to class. And each of the group will be asked to translate in different ways. For example, for one group, there are 2 groups, 3 groups altogether, and in each group there will be 2 teams. One team will be translating. I will ask them to translate as beautifully as possible, while faithfully to the ST, while the other team will be translating only the message, the information, despite the difficult things that they may encounter in the source text. So each group, there are 3 groups. In each group, there will be 2 teams, and each team will be already translated the source text, part of the source text, in different ways. And they are going to give presentations after I give them a brief introduction about Peter Newmark, his background, his main theories, a little bit introduction of the semantic translation and communicative translation. And each group, each team will be given about 7 minutes, no more than 10 minutes, to present their version. And they will be given them in a parallel way, so the other students will have a good idea of what kind of differences there may be for the semantic one and the communicative one, okay? And after each group, 2 teams, finish their presentation, we'll have a small discussion of the difficult things of which version they like, okay? So altogether, 6 teams will be given presentation, and students will have discussion. I will make my comment on some of the difficult words, such as 神韵、意趣、命意、暧昧不明之处. Okay? And this whole part will take up about 45 minutes. After that, I will give students more sentences of different styles. Some of the sentences will be expressive. Some of them will be more informative kind. And then I will ask them, which kind of method do you think may be more appropriate in translating them, for translating them? And after these sentences, the students will first work in small teams and have small discussion, and then we'll discuss on this thing. And after this part, we'll come to the summary session and the assignment session. In summary, I will not ask students to judge which method is better over the other one. I will just let them see and practice actually by themselves already what does semantic translation and communicative translation each mean in their real practice. And in terms of assignment, I would like them to read Eugene Nider's formal equivalence and dynamic equivalence, functional equivalence, and Peter Newmark's 2 ways of translation to see what do they think of the differences, similarities, or any idea they have. Okay? That will be all.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll ask you 2 questions.
Yeah.
The first one, could I ask you to translate the very last sentence of the text provided to you?
Okay, the very last sentence, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I would translate this as it takes several days of meditation and torturement before I finally figure out what dictation is more appropriate. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then, right. And your objective of this 90-minute class
Yes.
is to help students understand the 2 concepts by Peter Newmark, proposed by Peter Newmark, semantic translation versus communicative translation. Yes. And then in the very last part, you are going to give students 2 sentences to translate, but you are not going to ask them to actually say which one is better over the other. So then, what is the purpose of introducing these 2 concepts to the students? And if you are not going to ask them which one is better, or at least which one is probably more appropriate for a particular kind of text, where you talked about the vocative, expressive, informative.
Yeah.
And how do we know that you have achieved your goal, your objective of having the students understand these 2 concepts?
Yeah, thank you for your question. And here I think the key word in your question is to that particular text. I mean, when I say I don't want my students to judge which method is better over the other one, I mean not in a generalized way, that to say in communicative translation is better or the other one is better. I don't mean in a general sense, but of course to the specific sentences that they are very obviously expressive or informative or vocative, there will be one will be a little bit more appropriate than the other one, but not in a generalized way to say that you should always follow semantic. You should always, but they will know when should they prefer which one.
How do you know as a teacher whether they've got really fully understood these 2 concepts, I think?
Because after each sentence, they are discussing about the translation and they will be expressing their ideas when, for example, I ask 2 students to offer their version and the rest of the class will be saying, I like that one better, I like this one better.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.